Shooting it raw?
Yes. Shooting it raw. So I love the fact that this period of time happens where we meet, we make one connection, time happens, life happens, we come back. And then these anchors are your photos. So it's just like, yeah. But for me, it's just like, oh, okay. So it's called Head in the Clouds. And it's shot through the window of a jet. And there are all these beautiful, beautiful clouds over what seems to be ocean. I think it's over ocean. It's not just one empty kind of field, but there are lots of broken up clouds. It's very magical.
Mm-hmm.
And I think as humans, we take for granted that, we're going to fly over to London or fly out to Hong Kong or whatever and just cross the planet. But it's astounding to be able to see that kind of sight. So your head in the clouds, do tell.
Yeah, I believe I took that photo just on one of the flights I was on. I don't even think it was like going to Europe or anywhere crazy, but I just looked out the window and I think there's like some hues of pink and some different colors in the sky. And like you said, it was just such a magical image and I wanted to capture it. I am pretty fascinated by clouds in the sky. I'm looking up a lot of the times and I'm always seeing different shapes in the clouds. And I feel very inspired when I look up because it's just a reminder of, don't sweat the small stuff. There's way bigger things out there than me and my very myopic view of the world. And I love things that remind me that, being self-involved too much of the time doesn't serve me, nor does it serve anyone around me.
Right.
So that's what that represents. So the head in the clouds thing, and also like on the flip side of the coin, I am such a daydreamer. So when I was a child, my mother would always tell me my head was in the clouds, and I never had a problem with that. I was like, yeah, it is. I'm a dreamer. I'm a creative. I'm a writer. My head is in the clouds.
Okay, so one of the things so I moved to Hong Kong, and for the first few years, having this crisis of like moving there from Montreal, where Montreal was super creative, going to Hong Kong, which is super commercial and
very business oriented, very bottom line, right?
And in my work later, one of the things that we started realizing was that the mindset that helps people get out of the mud is one that basically focuses on your competence and, just basically your actions and what you do. But the thing is that the sides of your personality, which are, for example, your tendency to dream or your creative side or the less sort of pragmatic, like in countries like Canada and the US, where people have the extra leisure and the extra resources to actually sit back and go, okay, well, what do I want to do for me? Then it's there's more space to dream and to look at the sky. And so for a place like Hong Kong, which is was for the longest time, it was all about making a buck. There wasn't that release of self-discovery. So take us back to when you were a kid. Because the fact that you'd walk around staring in the cloud, in the sky and whatever, how much did your parents suffer that, indulge it, or encourage it?
Okay, you touched on a couple of really interesting things.
I have a tendency to talk for a while and then the person goes, I think what you mean, I don't know. So you figure it out.
So the first thing you talked about, I'm going to get to my parents and when I was younger in a second. But when you were talking about when people are stuck, is putting that, what helps them get out of it is something tangible that they can achieve. And I agree with that 100%. So I used to be an athlete, and one of my saving graces is when I feel like I'm spinning out. When I don't have control, when I'm not getting the calls or I'm getting, this getting rejected. Like my book was rejected so many
Mm-hmm.
times before it actually got out into the world. I'm so grateful to be able to do something physical and feel
Yeah.
strong physically, because when you're in your head, you can spin out and feel helpless, and there's nothing that can ground you. So doing exercises, whether it's going on a hike, doing a hard yoga class, even like doing some push-ups, or, holding a handstand against the wall for 2 minutes, like whatever it is, really helps me ground myself and come
Yep.
back
Mm-hmm.
down to reality and be like, okay, my feet are on the ground. I am in this room. I, like
Yep.
physically, I am capable. I'm a capable person. Like my brain might not be able to figure out this particular problem at this particular moment, but that's just a very small facet of my essence, of who I
Yeah.
am,
Of your experience.
of
Yeah.
my
Yeah. For
experience,
sure. Yeah.
so I love that you said that about, like, doing something physical. And then in terms of the dreaminess, so you are 100% right about living in the West. We have the luxury of being able
Mm-hmm.
to dream. So I'm half Tunisian. My mother is from Tunis, Tunisia.
Oh, wow.
So I'm first generation on my mother's side. I'm second generation on my father's side. My father's family's from Poland.
Oh.
So my grandparents had no choice. They came as immigrants, and they had to do whatever it took to scrape by. They had to they came here, they had to learn the language, they had to learn the culture, they had to learn how to assimilate, raising family, raising kids. My family, my mother's side of the family, are 6 kids.
Wow. Yeah.
Nobody even has 6 kids today. And
Except for the Australians.
yeah,
Sorry.
yeah. No, it's different. Well, that's the thing. People
Yeah.
coming from other countries, immigrants have six
Right.
kids.
Right. Right. Right.
Canadian citizens don't,
Sure. Sure.
as common. And then my mother was also an immigrant. She was born outside of the country. So she also didn't have the luxury. She had a little more agency than her parents did, because
Mm-hmm.
she came as a young person as opposed to coming as an adult. So, but she still had to learn the language, had to learn the culture. So there's a disadvantage. And also, she had to go to work. She had to go work in the family business. She didn't have the luxury of going to university.
Mm-hmm.
She started to go to York, and then her father said, no, I need you to come. Like, I need you
Mm-hmm.
to come and help. The business is growing, and I need more help. And that's just what you did.
Yep.
So the fact that I was born in Canada, that alone gives me a huge privilege and a huge advantage in terms of being able to decide, like, okay, I'm not going to get a regular job. I am not going to, go sit in an office. I'm a creative, and I'm going to honor that and nurture that and go for that. I've definitely had a dozen regular jobs. I've
Mm-hmm.
worked in
Mm-hmm.
restaurants, I've worked in offices, I've done all of that, but that's always been the side hustle.
Sure.
It's
Sure.
never been the forefront of my life. But I definitely agree that I never would have had any of those opportunities had my family not built a foundation for me
Sure.
that
Yeah.
allowed me to be the dreamer. And and it's funny because I did pretty well in school, and I had an aptitude for athletics. So I was an athlete for many years of my life.
Mm.
And yeah, and I think both my parents, just like every generation, you want to give your children more than you
Yep.
had. You want
Yep.
to give them more opportunities. You want to give them more fun. You want to give them more education. So I benefited from that. And definitely my parents were hard on me. My parents were very strict. Like, there was no
Mm-hmm.
such thing. Like, B's were not acceptable in
Mm-hmm.
school,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you know. Um, So in terms of academics and just, cleaning up after myself, making sure the dishes were washed, the beds were made every morning, we had our responsibilities. Um, but I definitely was given the opportunity to dream also.
But it's also great that you're able to get off the track of the functional dimension, which is okay. I am a working unit, and my hands and feet together work to produce labor that is, 7 hours a day, and they go into a factory and all that stuff. But then you're like, no, no, no. We're just gonna. They worked really hard, so you can separate yourself from that and make your own meaningful life, like make your own sort of
Hmm.
understanding of just life by going into something that some people would say is quite frivolous, which is theater. And
Yeah.
writing, writing, some people say, well, you could be a writer, but an actor typically, it's like if we think negatively about actors, it's like they're paid to, or not paid, their livelihood is to inhabit and pretend to be not themselves.
Yes. And sorry,
Take
go
it away.
ahead. No, I
No,
interrupted
no,
you.
no, please. It's all
Yes.
about you.
So yeah, like both my parents worked very hard. My father was in construction. Well, he still is. He's semi-retired because he's older now. And
Hmm.
I like last year. I think I like yelled at him. He like lifted a steel door and hurt himself. And I'm like, why are you lift? You're too old to lift anything. Why are you lifting things? you know. And my mom had a bakery for over
Wow.
20 years and then retired to take care of her mom when her mom got sick.
Wow.
So everybody worked really hard. When I say I benefited from the privilege of being born in Canada, and I saw my parents struggle. I saw them work hard. I saw them struggle. So I always had a really good work ethic.
Hmm. I
Sorry.
have to make, sorry, so the reason why I'm making all these sounds like I'm interrupting is because the way the world and life is, I find myself moving from Hong Kong back to Canada. I now live in Vancouver. I have two roommates, which is a really weird thing to be like pushing 50 and then having roommates. And one of my roommates is an actor
Mm-hmm.
in movies and TV and stuff. And so when people say, "Oh yeah, my like," well, yeah, like you say, like my parents worked really hard and whatever, the life you have is really hard. It is not
Yeah.
given.
Yeah.
It is really hard.
Yeah, and that's a lot of my friends acknowledge. Like I work harder than anyone they know.
It's
I'm
tough.
I'm not partners at a law firm. I'm not a doctor. I'm not curing cancer. But when people have cancer and they're going through chemo, when they're at home, what do? They watch movies. They
Exactly.
watch movies to make them feel better. They watch movies to distract them from their own, situation. And it's funny because, yes, on the one hand, everybody thinks it's frivolous until I pose one question. This is my favorite question when people try and diminish what I do.
Hmm.
Have you ever seen a movie or read a book or heard a song that changed your life? Across the board, the answer is yes.
Hmm.
We
Hmm.
are all affected. We are affected by great movies. We are
Yep.
affected by great books. We are affected by great songs. And these become important factors in our lives. They
Hmm.
help inspire us. How many of us put on a specific playlist when we need to go hard or when we're in the car going to an important interview? How many of us will put on a movie because we need to relate to what that character is going through at that moment, or we need to
Hmm.
laugh, or
Yep.
we need to get outside of our heads.
Yep.
And I like quoting people. So one of my favorite authors is Tom Robbins. And in his book, Still Life with Woodpecker,
Hmm.
one of the quotes is the purpose of the artist is to create or is to provide that which life does not.
Nice.
And artists have purpose. We have purpose in the
Sure.
world. I will defend that till the day I die. And maybe I haven't hit my stride yet, and maybe I haven't hit that masterpiece yet. And yes, not every actor has a shot at that great role or will ever do a great movie or a great play. But until you try, you never know.
Yes. All I could say is yes, yes, yes. I'm so behind you.
Thank you.
I completely agree, because when I ask people the similar question, which is, you know, has anybody in the world ever looked at a copyright law decision that didn't bring them to tears? I mean, who says no? Sorry. I'm an idiot. Yes. Okay.
No, it's hilarious.
Okay,
It's
but you're
hilarious.
totally right. You're totally right. Head in the clouds. I love it. I love it. And I love the energy and the fact that you. Are we going to talk about your book?
Sure.
Okay, should we move on to the next photo? Have you set this up? Is the next photo gonna? Because I want to talk about your book as well.
Yeah. Well, whatever you want. I'm game.
So, is life really a gift? Really? Can you make every second count? That's the whole point of the podcast. So, if you like what you've seen and you're inspired, because that really is my mission, then please give it a like, subscribe, and share.
Shooting it raw?
Yes, shooting it raw.